I almost gave up on gardening. I know that sounds dramatic, but 3 weeks ago, standing in front of my dying tomato plants, I honestly thought about just pulling them all out and being done with it. 27 years I've been growing tomatoes. 27 years, and I had never felt like such a failure. These plants, they weren't just struggling, they were giving up. Pale, yellowing leaves that curled at the edges like they were trying to hide from the sun. Stunted growth, barely 6 inches in 3 weeks. That look of quiet desperation that every gardener recognizes and dreads. The stems were thin, weak, bending under their own weight. When I touched the leaves, they felt papery, lifeless, not like the vibrant, almost juicy feel of healthy tomato foliage. I had tried everything. Every fertilizer at the garden center, I bought it. The organic ones, the synthetic ones, the expensive imported brands that promised European garden magic. I'd adjusted the watering, checked the soil pH 3 times with 2 different test kits, even brought in 2 bags of premium garden soil and worked it deep into the beds. Nothing worked. Nothing even helped a little bit. Every morning I'd walk out there with my coffee, hoping against hope that maybe today would be different. And every morning my heart would sink a little lower. The disappointment became a physical weight in my chest. My neighbor Sarah asked me what was wrong last Tuesday. I actually teared up right there on my driveway at 7 in the morning over tomato plants. But you understand, don't you? It's not really about the tomatoes. It's about that feeling when something you've loved and nurtured and put your whole heart into just isn't responding anymore. It's about wondering if you've lost your touch, if maybe you're too old for this, if the world has somehow changed and left you behind, if all those years of experience mean nothing anymore. That's where I was, rock bottom, in my own backyard. Then came the day I'll never forget. It was a Saturday morning, 2.5 weeks ago. I was actually on my phone, looking up how to dispose of diseased tomato plants properly. That's how far gone I was. I'd already accepted defeat. I was just trying to do the cleanup responsibly. But before I could make that final decision, my phone rang. It was my Aunt Teresa. She's 79 now, lives 3 states away, but still has the most incredible garden you've ever seen. People drive past her house just to look at it. We got to talking, the way we do, about life and family, and eventually, inevitably, about our gardens. I finally admitted what was happening. The shame in my voice must have been obvious because she got quiet for a long moment. I could hear her breathing on the other end of the line. Then she said something that stopped me cold. "Have you forgotten about Comfrey? Your grandmother would turn over in her grave." Comfrey. The word hit me like a lightning bolt. Suddenly I wasn't standing in my driveway anymore. I was 8 years old again, following my grandmother through her garden on a summer morning that smelled like dew and roses and rich earth. I could feel the sun on my face. I could hear the bees humming in the lavender. I remembered her hands, weathered and strong and gentle, tearing leaves from a tall, rough-leafed plant growing by the fence. Big leaves, hairy and green and full of life. I remembered her stuffing those leaves around her tomatoes, her peppers, her roses, not delicately either. She'd just tear them up and push them into the soil, work them in with her fingers. And I remembered plants that grew like they were on a mission from God himself. Tomatoes so heavy with fruit that the cages bent, peppers that needed 2 hands to pick, roses that bloomed from May to October without ever stopping. And then I remembered something else, something that made my knees weak. The summer my grandmother passed away, I had taken a small comfrey plant from her garden, a little piece of her, I thought, a living memory. I'd planted it in the far corner of my yard, in that shady spot where nothing else would grow. And then, in my grief and busyness and the chaos of life, I'd forgotten about it for years. It was still there. It had to be. Comfrey doesn't die. It thrives on neglect. How had I forgotten? I hung up with Aunt Teresa and practically ran to that corner of my yard. My coffee sloshed out of the cup. I didn't care. There it was, massive now, beautiful, thriving in the shade where nothing else would grow. The plant was easily 4 feet tall, maybe 5, with dozens of those big, rough leaves reaching up like it had been waiting all this time for me to remember, to come back, to need it. I started crying, right there in my garden at 8:30 in the morning, probably looking completely insane to anyone who might have seen me. All those years of buying fertilizers, all those trips to the garden center, reading labels, comparing NPK ratios, feeling like I needed experts and products and solutions from somewhere else. All that money, all that frustration, all those nights lying awake wondering what I was doing wrong. The answer had been growing in my own backyard the entire time, waiting, patient, alive. I went to my shed and got my pruning shears. My hands were shaking. I cut those comfrey leaves with something that felt like reverence. Big, green, full of life and promise. I could feel the weight of them, the substance. These weren't delicate leaves. They were thick, almost meaty, bursting with whatever mysterious magic my grandmother had known about. I took them to my tomatoes, my poor, dying, giving up tomatoes, and I did what I'd seen my grandmother do 40 years ago. I tore those leaves into pieces and stuffed them around the base of each plant. I worked some into the soil with my hands, feeling the earth cool and desperate for help. Then I made a tea with the rest. I filled a 5-gallon bucket, stuffed it full of comfrey leaves, filled it with water, and put a lid on it. The instructions came back to me like muscle memory. Let it steep for 3 days, Aunt Teresa had said, until it's dark and rich and smells strong. Like life itself, my grandmother would have said. So I waited. 3 of the longest days of my life. I checked that bucket every few hours like it was going to do something magical right before my eyes. On day 3, I opened the lid. The smell hit me first. Earthy, strong, almost overwhelming. The water had turned dark brown, almost black. It looked like concentrated life. I diluted it, 1 part tea to 10 parts water, just like Aunt Teresa instructed. Then I watered my tomatoes with it, slowly, carefully, talking to them like they could hear me, like they were old friends I was trying to save. I'm not going to lie to you. I didn't really believe it would work. How could leaves from one plant save another? It seemed too simple, too easy. Too much like something from another era that couldn't possibly work in our modern, complicated world. But I had nothing left to lose. So I waited. Day 1 after the treatment, nothing. The plants looked the same, still pale, still weak, still dying. Day 2, I thought maybe, possibly, the leaves looked slightly less yellow. But I was probably imagining things, seeing what I wanted to see. Day 3, I was sure I was imagining things. But day 4, oh, day 4, the new growth at the top was green, really, truly green. Not pale, not struggling, not that sickly yellow-green that breaks your heart. Green like hope, green like spring, green like my grandmother's garden. I stood there staring at it for 10 minutes. I touched those new leaves, afraid they'd disappear if I looked away. Day 5, more green growth. The stems seemed stronger. Day 6, I could swear they'd grown an inch overnight. Day 7, the transformation was undeniable. New leaves unfurling every day, stems thickening, the plant standing taller, reaching for the sun with renewed purpose, with something that looked like joy. I started checking them 3 times a day, morning with my coffee, afternoon when I got home, evening before bed. I couldn't stay away. I was watching a resurrection happen in real time. By day 10, I called Sarah over. She stood there staring, her mouth literally hanging open. "What on earth did you do?" she asked. "These look like completely different plants." They were different plants. No, that's not quite right. They were finally the plants they were always meant to be. The plants they'd been trying to be all along, if only I'd known how to help them. Today is day 16. Let me show you what's happened. These tomato plants have grown nearly 10 inches. 10 inches in just over 2 weeks. The leaves are deep green, vibrant, reaching out in every direction like they can't grow fast enough, like they're making up for lost time. The stems are thick and strong, the kind of stems that can support serious weight. And here, look at this. Flower clusters. Dozens of them. I've counted 43 clusters across 6 plants. 2 weeks ago, these plants were dying. Today, they're loaded with the promise of fruit, with the promise of abundance. I've been gardening for nearly 3 decades. I've seen plants respond to fertilizer before, but this is different. This isn't just feeding. This is healing. This is plants remembering what they're supposed to be. This is nature recognizing itself and responding with everything it has. Here's what breaks my heart and fills it at the same time. The answer was always right here. Comfrey has been used by gardeners for hundreds of years. Thousands, maybe. It's not some miracle. It's not a secret. It's not some new discovery from a laboratory. It's just wisdom we forgot. Wisdom that got buried under marketing and products and the idea that gardening has to be complicated. Comfrey's roots go down 15 feet deep. 15 feet. While your tomatoes are struggling to reach nutrients 2 feet down, Comfrey is mining the subsoil, pulling up potassium, phosphorus, calcium, trace minerals, all the wealth locked away where most plants can never reach it. Then those huge leaves capture it all, concentrate it, and when you cut them and give them back to your garden, it's like liquid gold. It's like the earth itself, distilled and purified and offered back. But more than that, it's like the plants are talking to each other, helping each other, the way nature always intended before we complicated everything. My grandmother knew this. Your grandmother probably knew this too. They didn't need labels or scientific explanations. They just knew that if you work with nature instead of against it, if you let your garden be the living, connected system it wants to be, everything changes. If you're watching this and you're feeling what I felt 3 weeks ago, if your plants are struggling and you've tried everything and you're ready to give up, please hear me. You haven't lost your touch. The world hasn't left you behind. You just forgot something. Something beautiful. Something simple. Something your grandmother knew. Start a comfrey plant. Just one. You can find them online at some garden centers, maybe from a neighbor who gardens the old way. Put it somewhere out of the way, somewhere shady where nothing else wants to grow. Water it once to get it started, then forget about it. Let it do what it does. And then, when your tomatoes need help, when anything in your garden needs help, remember what I'm telling you. Cut those leaves. Give them back to the soil. Make that tea. Watch what happens. This isn't just about fertilizer, it's about remembering that we're part of something bigger, that our gardens are alive, connected, whole, that the old ways weren't outdated, they were wise, and they still work, maybe better than anything modern gardening has invented. My tomatoes are going to give me fruit this year, more than I've seen in a decade, I think. But they've already given me something more valuable. They've given me back faith. In my garden, in myself, in the truth that nature knows what she's doing. Thank you for being here with me. Your grandmother is smiling right now. Mine certainly is.